sexual exploitation or forced labor. Human trafficking nowadays is broken down into several categories. There's one for labor, there's one for sex, and there's one for minors. Because you don't need force or coercion if the victim is a minor.
If the victim is a minor, are the penalties more severe?
Yes, human trafficking law became quite a bit more severe with the passage of Prop 35 at the end of 2012. So now we have a triad, a range of prison terms that has more teeth than it did prior. And if it is a minor who is the victim and there is force or coercion used, it can be as much as 15 years to life. So the penalties are much higher. And the law also has expanded to allow us to consider far more factors in deciding if it was human trafficking. Things like the relationship between the trafficker and the victim, the victim and recruiters, agents of the trafficker, force, duress, a lot of things that were not, that before the law changed, were something that we couldn't consider. So it's gotten easier in some sense, and the penalties have gotten greater, and our prosecutions have more than tripled in the last 5 years, between the years of 2009 and 2013.
Okay, that's kind of surprising. But we are hearing more about sex trafficking, and I want to bring in Armand King into this conversation because you're working with young men who are involved in this. And my question to you is, what is there a sort of come to church moment when the folks who are involved either as pimps or as young men who are being trafficked themselves, they say, I can't do this anymore?
Well, yeah, of course there is, because most people that are involved in this life, they start at an early age. So just like any young people, without the proper guidance, they do things to get money, to live better lives. And if there's no other options out there for them, they're going to reach out what they know. And if it happens to be pimping, selling drugs, or gangbanging, and there's nothing else to for them to do something else, then they're going to go for that. And yeah.
So you're working with some of the young men who have been, for lack of a better word, pimping some of the young women. Is there a sense that they feel an emotional attachment? This is a lot of it is about relationships, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. And most of the guys, they're not that they're savages or bad people. These are really, they themselves are victims. They themselves had to grow up mostly fatherless, mostly impoverished, mostly in situations where there was no other options for them to do anything else but that. It wasn't because they were cruel individuals and just wanted to be down on women or bad on women. It was an avenue to make money, in which a lot of the women are right along with them now for this. And there's many situations where the women themselves are turning out the guy into pimping, and it's not the guy pushing it on the women. So yeah, they're not doing this out of savagery or anything like that. It's a lack of opportunities, lack of economics. So we should more focus on the solution and maybe helping to prevent this before it becomes a problem, before they are into pimping. How do we create a solution to help them not feel like they have to pimp, have to prostitute? This can end the prostitution side and the pimping side if we concentrate on solutions and not just incarceration, because incarceration has never been the end all or the solution.
Okay, perhaps incarceration isn't the solution, but we do have to go back to the prosecution. There are laws on the books. So how do you prosecute these cases, especially if some of the victims or survivors of the trafficking may be reluctant to testify against this man who has been their protector?
And Sasha, that's such a realistic question, because that's what we find. You know, these guys are wolves in sharp clothing, and they hunt sometimes in packs. And what they'll tell you is they get farther with honey than with the vinegar. That type of seduction, if you will, often results in victims that are reluctant to testify, because the trafficker is often a boyfriend, sometimes a family member. It's heartbreaking circumstances. And the video you showed, every time I see that video, it just breaks my heart. But these are the relationships of love and loyalty. So yes, a lot of them are uncooperative with law enforcement. That's where the victim advocates, the trusted people that are a part of the community, can come in on the front end and sort of build that trust before we see them. We've created a task force in San Diego that's comprised of 15 different local, state, and federal organizations that's geared to, as my co-panelist says here, trying to find a solution to this problem before it starts. And if we could figure out how to reduce the demand, that would be another way we could work together towards trying to drive the statistics down, because we're removing the traffickers from the streets and making sure that young men don't choose that lifestyle to begin with.
Yeah, we're coming close to the end of this segment, but Armin, I want to ask you, how do we reduce the demand then for this?
the inner city where a lot of this, where I see the attention, even though prostitution is going everywhere in the different communities, a lot of the attention and direction is towards the inner city and urban communities. And in those communities, there's a lack of resources. There's a lack of option. Imagine growing up in a box your entire life where all you know is that box. You can't think outside of that box. We need to come inside with the proper people and organizations that can reach these guys and create the solution, bring economics into the community. Right now, we're jobless, hungry, and we need help. And the help isn't the jail cell.
Well, I see that your organization is doing something to further that and to try to create more economic opportunities, alternatives, so that these young people aren't turning to a life of crime.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, still ahead on San Diego People, we're going to bring